A very good afternoon to one and all. I'm Ansi Bagde. Welcome you all for today's session. Research is seeking what everybody else has seen and thinking what nobody else has thought. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our speaker today, who is going to talk us about research internship. This is a topic in which we all are deeply interested because eventually it's a part of our career. Our speaker, although having spent most in it, she is a final year undergraduate at NIT Warangal and also an research intern at University of Pittsburg. She has published 3 research papers in international conference and 2 in international journal. Also worked in product development of telemedicine. She filed an Australian innovation patent in August this year. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our dynamic guest, Miss Vidya Moni. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for your kind words. I especially want to thank Paritosh for making this happen. It's a great honor for me to speak to all of you. So without any further ado, let's get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. Just let me know when you guys can see it. All right. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay, so let's get started. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a final year undergrad in the Department of Electrical Engineering at NIT Warangal. And my interests are primarily AI and machine learning. And I'm currently interning at IIT Madras and University of Pittsburg. So so these are the things I'm going to talk to you about. First, let's cover everything about Indian universities, about how to cold mail, how to write a resume, how to find professors. And once we finish that, we'll go on to universities abroad in US, Canada, Australia, and Europe. Right? So without further ado, let's get started with Indian universities. Once I move on to the next slide, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask me any questions. All right? At any point, that's totally fine. So let's start with how to find professors in Indian universities. So the easiest way to find them is just to Google the university name plus the department you're interested in plus faculty. So I'm just going to walk you through everything. So let me give you an example. So I'm going to look for NIT Warangal EEE faculty. All right. So the first link itself will give you everything you need to know. And now you have the list of all the professors in NIT Warangal in your department. So that's the simplest way to find profs. Then the next thing that we have to do is look for a professor who shares the same kind of interests as you do. So you typically in the website itself, the areas of interest are mentioned. All right. So I'm going to give you an example in AI because that's what I'm interested in. Supposing my interest is in computer vision and AI, okay, you look at the professors, even if somebody says they're interested in AI, like let's take this professor, right? He is interested in AI, but the other areas of interest are quite far away from AI. So it is likely that the kind of project he will give me might not be exactly what I want. All right. So make sure that even if one keyword of your interest is present in the professor's area of interest, make sure that the remaining keywords and the other things that he's interested in is also somewhat correlated to what you're doing, right? So now you can look through all the professors. Let's assume you found your area of interest, okay? Now the next thing is to check out their Google Scholar. So let's take Professor Shailaja Kumari ma'am. She's our HOD, right? So I'm just going to check out her Google Scholar and show you guys. So I just Google her name plus put a Google Scholar over here. Right? Now the first link leads to her Google Scholar. So you can see what she's. Okay. So now typically you get all the research papers that anybody has written in Google Scholar. There are two ways to order them. One is by citations and one is by year. Citations, so in this case, it's ordered by citations, meaning the most number of citations, the paper with the most number of citations is first, and then the second is next, and so on and so forth. I hope you guys know what citations are. Just in case you don't know, when you write a research paper, in the references, you cite other people's papers. So citations means that this paper has been referred to in other papers 254 times. This paper 86 times, so on and so forth. So these are what citations are. So typically more citations means it's a better paper. Better in the sense more people have referred to it, more people uh, appreciate its validity and add it to their research. So you're typically looking for professors who have a high number of citations. That means that they have done some groundbreaking research which leads other researchers to think reference their papers. So this is one criteria. The other criteria you have to make sure is that a professor has published in recent years. Okay, so let's take this particular professor. Her last publication was in 2021, and then the publication before that was in 2018. So in the last 3 years, there have not been that many publications. So it's possible that she could be taking a break from research because of departmental duties or anything else. So it's less likely that she'll be looking for a project or an undergrad intern because she is not publishing that often right now in the current years. But before that, she had in 2016 to 18, there were quite a few. So this is one more factor that you have to look at. So let's take a look at some other prof. Let's take a look at this prof. I'm going to look at his Google Scholar. All right, let it load. Right. So this professor, okay, let's go by year again. Okay, this professor has published in 2019 and 18 and quite a few publications in 2018, and he has a very, very, very high H index. So H index is basically, I'll just Google it and get you the exact term of what it means. So it's a metric for evaluating the cumulative impact of an author's scholarly output and performance. That basically means that how good the professor is, how many publications and citations he has or she has. It's a quantitative way of measuring it. I don't exactly know the formula, but I don't think it's important. It's just a simple number, and the higher the number, the better. So for an Indian professor, an H index above 5 is considered very good. The higher the H index, the more citations and publications the professor has. So I guess like by now, you guys have figured out how to find a prof in some Indian university that you want based on your department and based on your interests. All right. Now that you have found the professor, let's talk about little more about Indian internships at NITs and IITs. So we have two breaks basically every year. Most colleges do a winter break and a summer break. Now, this information is little bit relevant to before COVID. The best thing to do in a winter break would be to intern at an IIT or NIT in your home state because it's not very far and it's easy to go there. But since COVID, most internships have become remote, so it doesn't matter whether it's in your home state or not. But supposing you are the kind of you're in a department or in a field where you need to go there and you can't do the project remotely, you need to physically be present in the lab, then again this would still apply to you, and you should intern at an IIT or NIT in your home state in the winter break, right? So the winter break typically is from December to Jan, and the summer break, the best thing to do is either the top 5 IITs, the top 3 NITs, or ISC. This would be around 3 months from May to July. So there are two standard ways of applying to internships at IITs and NITs. One is applying through programs, and one is cold emailing. So I personally prefer cold mailing because I feel that you have a direct connection with the professor. You can see what that professor, what he or she is doing, and if you're interested in that research, you can reach out to them. And there are a lot of formalities required for programs, and I personally don't. I mean, I have not applied through programs. Most of everything that I have done is through cold emailing. So I'm not discouraging you. Each to his own. You can apply for programs, but this talk is mostly going to be about cold mailing, right? So you can easily find these programs on the web. Google them, and there'll be an application form. You can find the deadline, and you can email. You can apply. But I'm going to talk mostly about cold mailing. So in India, you start in Jan for a summer internship. If you want to intern in the summer, you start cold mailing in Jan, and September if you want to start interning in December or Jan for the winter internship. So these are the timelines you've got to follow. Now, I'm going to show you a cold mailing template. So this is how a standard Indian like cold email looks. All right, this is one of my, yeah. So this is the email that I had sent for my internship when I was last year, right? When I was in my third year. So all the stuff highlighted in red is what you have to change as per your what you want. So there's a slight difference between an internship and a project. You have to be kind of specific about that. An internship is typically for a specified duration of time, let's say 2 months or 3 months or something like that. A project is little more open-ended, and typically people do projects during the semester. An internship is more like a full-time commitment that you give during the break. So that's what I mean, that's generally what it's called. So actually in this particular case I was looking for a project, not an internship, so just make it clear what you're looking for, right? So the first paragraph of the mail just has to consist of your name, your year, and your department and college. And it's important to write in the very beginning what you're interested in, like what's the purpose of the email, right? So then, you say that I would like to work with you on an internship or project or whatever, in whatever your field is. For me, it's ML. So this is a list of publications I had when I wrote this email. I wrote these in chronological order, like first this, then this. You can write it in any order you like. So most people don't have publications in their second year and third year. I understand that. So instead of your publications, whatever projects you've done, even if it's just an online certification or anything, you can put it in your email, right? Put the like 2 or 3 most important things that you feel that you have done. And even if you feel that it's very trivial and anyone could have done it or anything, it's not like that. Like the professor just wants to see how motivated you are. Before the internship, they're not expecting you to know everything, right? So just put, your top 2 projects or top 3 projects, even if they're courses or whatever it is, right? Then after this, you mention, good qualities that you have, that you're hardworking or professional or whatever. This, you can basically just copy this, right? Because obviously, if you're looking for an internship, you will work hard. So that's not an issue. And you can attach your CV and just sign off with yours sincerely and your name. So one more thing that I learned very recently is that attach a Google Drive link to your CV rather than attaching your CV in the email. Because from a professor's point of view, when they're opening it, if you attach your CV just directly, they'll have to download it and open it. Okay. If you attach a Google Drive link, they can just view it and they don't have to download it. So that makes them happier. So just stick to that and attach a Google Drive link for your CV, right? So this is, a basic template for emailing in India. If you follow this, I think you should get some internship or the other in an IIT, NIT, or even an ISC. One small thing that I noticed about ISC, which I wanted to share with you all, is that certain labs have a requirement that you need some kind of a scholarship to apply to the lab, and or a fellowship. And I don't have any such thing. Like I just have my bachelor's degree. I don't have a fellowship or anything like that. So certain labs are off limits. So instead of applying, so first I would suggest you apply to IITs and NITs. And if nothing happens, then you can go ahead and apply to ISC, but they may have this requirement. So just be aware of that. All right. So let's move on to the next thing, which is, that's it. Yeah, the standard template for an Indian resume. Okay, so Indian resumes and resumes you're going to send abroad are completely different. Okay, the type of resume that you're going to write for an Indian internship or job, you can't really use for a American internship or job. And typically, most people applying abroad and in India have 2 sets of resumes. I don't have my current Indian; it's not updated, so I've used my friend's resume as a template. So I'll just show it to you in a minute. So make sure that you include the following information. One is extracurricular activities or interests. Anything you're interested in, any sports you've played, anything like that, that is important. Mention online courses and certifications, because nowadays it's a trend that most people do online courses in their area of interest. So, make sure you mention that. In addition, you can also mention relevant coursework. Coursework is basically stuff that courses that you have done as part of your undergrad studies that might be relevant to that particular lab or professor you're applying to. And of course, positions of responsibility, what clubs you're a part of, all of that. That is important. So I'm just going to open this resume and show you. All right. So this is how a standard Indian resume looks like. Make sure you mention your skills, what programming languages you're good at, and how much you've done in them. Like for example, he's mentioned he's a beginner in Python. And mention when you're mentioning projects, make sure that you write a couple of lines about what the project entails. If you just write, like, let's say just the heading of the project, the professor or the person who's reading your resume won't exactly know how much work you did, what did you do. They'll just see the title of the project, and if they're a nice person, they'll think that you did a lot of work. If they don't give you the benefit of the doubt, then they'll assume that it's just something that you're writing. So it's important to mention what you did in the project just to make that person understand what you're working on. One more tip that I would give you is that you mention the timeline of the project, like let's say May to June or August to December or whatever it is, so that they know, they in their mind they feel that, oh, from this time to this time, this is what you were doing. So that makes them kind of make a timeline about you in their head about what you have done at what time, and it fits into that, so they like it. So mention the dates of the project. That would be like a good thing to do. Mention your positions of responsibility. That is important. Certifications also is important. And mention your interests. And this style of writing a resume, in the sense of double column style, is perfectly fine for India. And this is like, you can follow this, and even if it's not totally black, it's fine. Like for example, this is a deeper blue and this is black. You can have colors. You can make it as creative as you want. That's not too much of an issue, and this is perfectly fine. So, I just want to know, do you guys have any questions about Indian internships before I move to the next section, which is like internships abroad? Anyone has any questions about how to apply or anything like that? Even if it's a small question, it's all right.
What is the basic criteria for giving an internship?
Basic criteria in the sense?
Means we have to learn something. For example, we have to learn Java or Python. Then
Okay.
only we have to go.
So that depends on your field. So there's no standard criterion, right? Like for example, if you're doing an AI internship, you will have to do some courses in AI. If you're doing, okay, I'm just gonna take a look at the chat box. Give me a sec. Okay, how to classify a good or bad internship and what is required for an internship. So, if you tell me your specific area of interest, I might be able to guide you. But the best thing to know, best way to know about what is the prerequisite of an internship in some particular field is to talk to a senior in that field. So he or she will tell you that this is what you'll need to learn for this. Specifically for AI, I can give you guys a bunch of courses on Udemy and Coursera to do, and a timeline, right? Okay. So to answer the first question, depends on your field. Whatever it is, there will be some things that you need to do beforehand. So that you can either find out through a senior who's already done it, or you can Google it, but it's not the same throughout. Okay, so next question, how to classify a good or bad internship. Okay, so there are two ways to classify a good or bad internship. One is the institute at which you're doing it. But I feel that's a little narrow-minded by saying that, oh, this IIT is better than that IIT, and this internship is better than that internship. The best way to actually classify an internship is to see what work you're doing, whether you learned anything, whether you implemented something new, whether you published in a good place, whether you did you do a good enough job that the professor was pleased with you. That is the measure of a good or bad internship. So whatever professor you get an internship under, you can make it a good or bad internship by working hard. So, but the most simple way for outsiders to classify an internship is just the institute. If you do it at just, look at the NIRF rankings, and if you do it at this place, some IIT, you'll get it's, let's say, X good. If you do it at an NIT, it's slightly less good. It just, but the best way to actually look at an internship is the work that you're really doing. So that's what I would say. That's how to classify good and bad. Okay, what timeline should we start emailing or approaching professors? So as I said, for Indian internships, you start around January for a summer internship. So summer, I'm guessing in your summer vacation, you'll want a summer internship. So you start around Jan, and you start around September for a winter internship. So this is, any other questions, or should I get started with the foreign internships part?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, cool.
Ma'am, like when we can start our cold mailing or programming, like in specific year, like right now I'm in second year. So is there any specific
Okay.
timing, like in third year you should start, or in like?
So this is what I typically advise all my juniors to do. When your first internship should be at an IIT or an NIT, because Indian professors understand us better. They know what we have learned. So actually, it doesn't matter when you start. In the sense, you can start in your second year. Most people prefer to start in their third year summer. I mean, like the summer after your second year. But I started publishing in my first year itself. So it totally depends upon you. If you want to do it, you can start, because whatever you need to learn for an internship, you can learn online. So if you're motivated enough, you can. The best time to start is immediately, basically. So coming to the order of the internships, what I would suggest is first go for an Indian internship under a prof, either in your own university or in some NIT or IIT. Once you've completed that internship and you have some idea about how to do research, what is required, how to think, then you move on to doing an internship abroad. If the first internship you do is abroad, the problem is you might get the internship, but you might disappoint the professor by not having enough prerequisite knowledge about your field and about research. So I've done, I think, like 3 or 4 internships in India before I started at Pittsburgh. So make sure that you're completely ready once you do a foreign internship. So as for the timelines, you can start in any year. Even if you're in first year, I won't discourage you. You can start. You have everything that is required. You can get started.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to move on to the next section. Just give me a second. I'm sharing my screen. Okay. So now this is how to find professors in unis abroad. Okay, so I'm just warning you, the websites of universities abroad are quite complicated and not as straightforward as Indian universities. So it's a little bit difficult to find. So after my internship at Pittsburgh, I'm starting an internship at New York University, that is NYU, from June of 2022. So I'm just going to use the example of NYU and show you how to find professors. Okay. So step number 1, Google the university name plus area of interest plus faculty. Previously for Indian internships, we just looked at the department. Here, if you look at the department, there are like hundreds of professors in each department, and each department spans several labs, and there are several schools within a university, and it's like very messy. So it's much easier to look at the specific area of interest you are looking at, and then you'll find the professors more easily. So let's just Google NYU, okay, artificial intelligence faculty, because that's my area of interest. All right, so the first link will take you to the computer science department in NYU. This is going to be very, you're going to see hundreds of professors, and most of them are going to be in a different area of interest, and it's easier to just directly go to AI at NYU, right? So all of these professors who you see are all interested in AI. So since my subfield is in AI, I could technically apply to any of them, right? So now what you do is, in this particular case, you can just hover over the professor and you see, what their research interests are. He has population health, translational science, ML for healthcare. You can just keep on, looking at these. So now that you've got your general area of interest, obviously each person will have a specific area of interest. So by the time you finish your internship in India and you have done a project, you will begin to understand that, okay, this is something I like, this is something I don't like. And you will begin to find who you are and what your actual passion is in engineering. So right now, I am really interested in something like computer vision. However, if I look for only professors in computer vision, that first of all severely limits the number of people out there. And secondly, given that we are at an undergrad level, any learning is good learning, I feel. We are not PhDs, we have not defined our areas that much. So you apply to anybody in your area of interest, whatever the project is, try to learn from it and you'll definitely gain something. So don't be too picky about your areas of interest. So just apply to anybody who's in the general same area as you. So I could apply to any of these professors. Like simple example, I'm interested in computer vision. This professor is interested in robotics. That is a good enough match. There is some component of computer vision in robotics. It's fine. Go ahead, apply. So you can, there are all of these professors. You can apply to any of them. One more way of looking for professors is through Google Scholar. I'll just show it to you. I use that way sometimes, but I prefer to look at a university website. So I'll just show you how to find people on Google Scholar who will be interested in what you want. So I'm gonna take my standard thing. So let's take some random university. Okay, let's take Stanford, right? So I'm going to look for machine learning in Stanford. Okay. So it's going to, yeah, there are some PDFs here. Here you can change it from articles to profiles. And yeah, so over here you will get a list of people who are associated with Stanford in the field that you want. Like, for example, machine learning, you can put whatever you want. So the problem with this method is that if you look at, let's take the first person, their affiliation is Amazon machine learning, which means they're not a professor. Second affiliation, again, machine learning engineer in Facebook, again, not a professor. You can keep, again, software engineer. So these people have gone to Stanford, so you'll be able to find some professors, but this is one way of doing it, but it's better to go to the website, I believe, because everybody here will be in some kind of a faculty position with the university. Right? So this is how you look for professors abroad. And sometimes the university websites can be quite confusing. Like NYU is kind of straightforward, but others could be a little more confusing. It takes some time, you'll get used to it, you have to wade through it, figure it out. So that is something that has to be done. So it's fine. Okay, so again, we look at a professor who shares the same interests as you. For further information, check out Google Scholar, as we did with India. And for professors abroad, I'd suggest you go for an H index above 10 because that instead of above 5. Most professors abroad have an H index of above 10, but I would just put that as a baseline for you to decide which prof you want to go with, right? So now let's say that you have got a professor. Now how to cold mail them. So these are the required documents for cold mailing. You need a resume and you need a cover letter that you're going to embed within the mail. So the timeline for cold mailing. So first of all, cold mailing internships for professors abroad, you're not going to get anything for the winter break because the winter break is just too short. Maybe you can do something remotely, but definitely not in person because there are a lot of visa related issues and all of that most people have. So I wouldn't suggest at all trying for the winter break. A much better option would just be to intern at an IIT or an NIT during the winter break. So we're only talking about the summer break, all right? So the required documents are a resume and a cover letter. So the timeline is quite important. You have to start emailing from July. I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule, like August is also fine, but start emailing as soon as possible. Almost a full year in advance is also fine. If you're looking for an internship in May, like starting, let's say May of 22, and you email in July of 21, that's good. Email as early as possible. All right. So I don't know how many of you know about the Streak Chrome extension. It's basically a mail tracker. You can track the mail and see how many times it's been read from what location. So use the Streak Chrome extension to track your emails so that you know whether the professor is reading it or not. If the professor is interested in you and has read your mail several times, then you could expect in the back of your mind that maybe they will write back to you. Okay, so make sure to use this. If you're very anxious and you get nervous about stuff and you're going to keep on checking the tracking, then don't use it. But if you're curious to know whether they've read your mails, you could use this extension. Okay, very important. Schedule emails for 9 a.m. in the recipient's time, Monday to Friday. Because if you email at some random time, like 2 a.m. for them, they'll get so many emails the next morning and your email will get buried and they will probably never open it. If you just open any of our emails, we are always getting all kinds of crap emails from everyone and a lot of spam. So make sure that you schedule the email for 9 a.m. such that the first thing when they open their email in the morning, when they reach their department, they see your email. So that is important. Okay, now the most important thing about approaching a prof in abroad is to mention your source of funding. If you're doing the internship remotely, it's totally fine. There's no need for any source of funding. If you're doing the internship in person, you either have to pay or the professor has to pay you. You have to mention whether you're self-funded or not. My experience, so the University of Pittsburg internship is remote, and the internship that I'm doing next year at NYU is also remote. I would suggest to do remote as much as possible because many people have visa. So I don't have visa related issues because I'm a citizen of US, but most people I know, all of my friends have visa related issues, and the university needs to sponsor your visa for you to come there. The second thing is living for 1 month or 2 months abroad in any of these continents is very expensive. So it's going to be like a huge financial toll to take, and I don't see the point of it. If you are in a field that requires you to intern at the lab, then it's worth it. But if you are in a field that can be done remotely, I would say stick to remote as much as possible. If you, because typically if you ask the professors for funding, they're not going to give it to you because even for them it's expensive. So this is important. If you have a scholarship that you're going on, like MyTax or DAD or something like that, then the professor's problem is solved. You can go and intern there in person, and the scholarship will pay for your stay there. So, but most people, I mean, these scholarships are extremely competitive, and most people I know don't have them. So I would suggest stick to remote. If you can't do remote, then it's worth it to pay and go there. But if you can do remote, try not to take that financial burden and do it. All right. So this is what is required to email profs. Then I'm going to show you an email. Yeah. All right. So, okay. So yeah, I have attached 2 emails over here. Okay, there, whichever one you like more, you can do, right? So let me just walk you through the email. So first, this title, the heading of the email, the subject is pretty much, you can just write the same thing regarding 22 summer or whatever the year is, summer internship in whatever your field is. In this particular student is interested in supply chain, whatever it is, you can just add it here. Okay, so then you don't use sir, okay, for emails abroad. You use professor so and so, and you can use dear instead of respected. That's also fine. All right. So then you start out again with your name and department, year, and college, and it's also important to mention with a professor abroad some paper or work of theirs that you liked. Over here, a paper on best worst method based performance evaluation framework for manufacturing. You can any paper that you find interesting. So when I'm saying a paper, you don't actually have to read the whole paper. Just read the abstract, read the conclusion, read the title. Just take a look at the general, skim through the paper and see, is this something that I would find interesting? So like most people get scared when I say read a paper. You don't have to read the whole thing to email a prof. Just look through it and see, is this something that you could imagine yourself doing for 2 months? Let's put it that way. mention, one such paper that the professor has written, and then, just say that. And then you mention what projects you're doing. Okay, so again, here I would suggest you add a little bit of detail about the project that you're doing. Take, like, let's say your top two projects, the most important things you have done. You can also, if you have done another internship, you can mention that internship, whatever it is, your top two or three achievements, research achievements, just highlight them. All right. Then let's move on to the next part. Okay, so you say that I would like to work for you under your guidance or whatever as a summer research intern for 2 months, and you have to be specific and mention which 2 months. Okay, June 2022 to July 2022. Mention that specifically. Okay, then in the email itself, it's very important to mention how you're being funded. He has mentioned he is willing to fund his internship himself. If you're not willing to fund your internship, you write remote, or you write that I will require a stipend for my basic living expenses in US or Europe or wherever you're writing to. This is very important because often a professor, if they don't know your source of funding, they feel that that's like an awkward conversation that they'll have to have with you, and then they feel like it's not worth it and just leave it, because they'll have to ask you how are you going to be funded, and they don't want to get into all that. So if you just mention it, it'll sort that problem right away. Then you thank them and sign off. In Indian emails, don't put your department, but in emails abroad, I'd suggest you put your department and school, university. Then there's another similar template that I've put here. You could use either one. It's quite similar. And yeah, so he is bolded this over here. All right. So I would also suggest you bold your this thing, source of funding. That's quite important. Make sure that that is in bold so that they can see that and figure out whether they want you or not. So I'm going to share this template with all of you. You can directly remove the red stuff and put what you want, and your template is ready. I'll send you the links to all of this after the meet. So yeah. Okay, so I think, any questions so far about the cold mailing template? You can just unmute and ask me. If there's nothing, I'll move on to the next thing. Okay, so next thing is a template for an American resume. Okay, so this is going to look a little boring. It's not going to be colorful. Stick to a single format. Okay, like a single border, a single column format. Don't have two columns in your resume. Okay, that doesn't look very nice. Don't have different colors. Make it very simple. And one more important point is you should have a summary in the beginning, a summary of who you are or what you're looking for. So this is my resume. I'm just going to show it to you. So I'll just walk you through it. I have my introduction is very small in terms of space. I've just written my name, my citizenship, and my contacts. So make sure it's as compact as possible. Okay, everything is in this format: summary, education, research experience, and my technical communications. So I have 1 patent, 1 book chapter, 2 journal publications, 2 conference publications, whatever it is. Just put it in that order. And it looks very different from an Indian resume. So an Indian resume, you can't send to US prof because they'll find it unprofessional. That's why I made it a specific point. So it's important to have a summary in the beginning. Okay. Another thing is, in your education in a US resume, you don't need to put your high school, unless there is some specific point that you want to prove, like you got very good grades or something like that. Like, let's say you got 95% in 12th or something, then you can put it. Otherwise, it's not required. Okay, so then in your research experience, first put the university that you're working at, or whatever it is, IIT, Pittsburgh, whatever. Then put your designation, and you can mention your guide as well, like who you worked under. And it's important to mention what you're working with. All right. And the important thing is that don't blabber too much. In the sense, don't put unnecessary words or big words, because in US, the more compact your resume is, the better it looks. Just put exactly what you did and don't make it sound better or worse. Just be very, very precise. All right. So just put like just 2 points for each internship. Okay. So I interned in two different departments in NIT. So what I've done is first I put NIT Warangal, then I put my position, and then I changed the department and the guide and put whatever I did under this guide, and then again here. So if you've interned at two different departments in the same college, which often happens, you can structure it like this. Very important to mention the dates, right? When you started and how long it's going. That's quite important. Then I interned over here. I've put this. Yeah. So technical communications, whatever patents or book chapters or publications, whatever it is, you can just put it in this format. If you have several kinds of technical communications, you can have one section where you just summarize everything. So it becomes easy. Like, okay, fine, this is what she's talking about, and then keep going from there. Then projects. Okay, so honestly, I have not done that many projects. I just kind of started research without this, and most people have a lot of projects. So this is how you could structure a project. If you mention, I've not mentioned the timeline of the project here because I there was only one project, but typically you should mention from when to when you did that project. So it you know falls into their timeline for you. Then workshops and courses. This is actually not really required for an American resume unless there's something you feel that is like worth mentioning. Unless you have some, let's say, some nice specializations from some cool places, you can put it. Otherwise, it's not required. Then again, in leadership and activities, do mention what you have done. All right. Mention what the club does or what you have done, and make it clear that this is your responsibility in this particular club. So don't let anything be vague. In the sense, always describe whatever you're doing. Describe your work in terms of your research, and also describe your PORs. Interests, you can put or you don't have to put. That's completely optional. I just chose not to put interests, but it's up to you. You can put a set of interests, like whatever your hobbies are and things like that. So this is how to format an American resume. Try to stick to this format, because otherwise it's considered unprofessional, right? So any questions about the resume, or should I move on?
We can continue.
All right, cool. Okay, so now the final thing that you need for emailing profs abroad is a cover letter. So I'm just gonna open this link. Okay, so this cover letter is written by one of my friends, Abdur. He is from NIT Trichy. Okay, so cover letter is typically a little long. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through it. So in the beginning, you have to address the professor. Okay, you have to write to Professor who and who, so and so, university, department, affiliation, whatever. That has to come in the beginning. You guys must have done a formal letter format, right, in English in like 5th standard or something. It's somewhat similar to that. You write the date and you write the to, and then you start with the respected. Okay, this is just the body of the letter, but it's important to put these things in the beginning. Okay, so the first thing, the very first line is why you're writing the letter, right? He has mentioned he wanted to work at TU Munich as a student research assistant, and mention again how long it is and from when to when. That is very important. Okay. Then again, over here you can mention your which year you are in, what you're pursuing, what college you are in. And he has mentioned his GPA because his GPA is like incredibly high. I don't mention my GPA because my GPA is not something I would like to mention. So it's totally optional. You cannot mention your GPA if you don't want to. And then you give a summary of what you have done. All right. So first, so you can first mention how you got interested in that particular field. That's a good thing to mention because professors will understand your point of view and where you're coming from. If there's any, let's say, some incident in your life that made you interested in something, then you start off with that. Then explain about your work, explain about what you're good at, all your skills. So he's mentioned that he's working on open quad for drone automation, and some notable features about his project. Then you can also mention your previous research work. I would suggest so this cover letter is quite long because this particular student has achieved quite a bit. And I mean, he has a lot of stuff because this cover letters was, I think, written at the end of his third year or something like that. So what I would suggest is don't make it that long, okay? Keep it, maybe cap it at 500 words. I don't know how many words this is, but try to keep it under 500 words. If there is some, I mean, if your projects itself are covering 500 words, then just write like 1 or 2 lines about your previous research work, right? So for example, this paragraph, you can just stop it here, okay? You don't need all of this, okay? Just keep your cover letter short. Then, okay, so he has mentioned that he's taken on 600 hours of research experience, and this is, I mean, this is a cool line to put. How much ever you can approximately calculate the number of hours of work you've done apart from your internships and add that. That is a nice thing to write. And again, summarize the whole thing. Say that you would like to, be employed as a research assistant in your group, period of 8 to 12 weeks during this time. And again, he's mentioned his stipend over here. Since he got the DadWise scholarship, he doesn't need any funding. If you need funding, you'll have to mention that. If you want to do it remote, mention that again. All right. So again, this is not applicable to us unless you have DAD. Okay, so thank you for your consideration. Here with attached are my resume and transcript. You don't have to attach your transcript if your grade is above 8.5, I think you can attach your transcript and mention your grade. If it's below 8.5, then don't do it. You attach your resume in the cover letter once again. So you attach your resume in the main email as well as the cover letter so that they'll end up clicking on your resume twice. Okay. And one more thing I just wanted to mention about resumes is that people give you about 30 seconds. Okay. They're going to give you 30 seconds and they're going to skim through the whole thing in 30 seconds. So put only things that you really want people to know. Some random stuff, no, don't put it. Like, for example, some achievements that you had in school or something like that. Unless it's really notable and it's something that most people don't have, it's not worth putting. Just keep it compact and put only things that you want other people to know. All right. So this is how a cover letter is written. Anyone has any questions about the cover letter?
Yes, what's the word range for a general cover letter?
General in the sense?
Any standard cover letter?
Cover letter applying for an internship or a job or what?
Internship abroad.
So my estimate would be 500 words. Don't go beyond that. This particular cover letter is quite long, but the problem is that the prof won't have time to read it. They won't really read it. Even when I was just showing it to you, right? I have not read everything. I just, randomly skimmed through it and pointed this and that out to you because it takes time to read a long cover letter, right? So try to keep it at 500 words. Don't, go beyond that. All right. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Any other questions about the cover letter?
Ma'am, what we will learn in internship?
Sorry?
Ma'am, for example, yeah. Ma'am, what the professors will tell about in internships?
As in?
Ma'am, ma'am, for example, you applied for AI. So
Hmm.
what did you learn from professors
Okay.
while doing internship?
So how does an internship typically go? That is the question you're asking, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So what the professor basically has a project in mind. Okay. So let me start. Okay. I'm going to talk about this internship, right? Because the internships that I'm doing at IIT and Pittsburgh are a little more advanced. but this was quite a simple internship, so I'm gonna talk about this one. So the faculty involved basically comes to you with some particular project, and they say that, okay, we have this data, we have this thing, we have that thing, and we need to make something out of it. And this is the type of project that we want you to carry out. So the first 1 month of any internship is typically a literature survey. You read papers about that field, you read papers about that data, and you kind of figure out all the background about the project that you're going to be working on. For example, in this particular internship, I had to use deep learning and machine learning to predict the transformer oil degradation based on some kinds of parameters. So now I know nothing about transformer oil degradation before, because it's not been taught to me as part of my undergrad, and I never had any particular interest in learning about transformer oil. So the first 1 month, I basically we read about I think about 10 papers on transformer oil degradation. So we understood each of these parameters. We understood what is the correlation between that and the degradation and all of that. Okay, so typically you start out your internship with a literature survey. I'm telling you in this context, but whatever it is, whatever field it is, you start out with a lit survey. Then you slowly try to implement one very simple model to the data you have and see how it goes. So once you do your literature survey, you also learn a little, you'll understand what are the things you need to learn. For example, this project required ML and DL. You can learn ML and DL from courses, and it goes at a very slow pace. So first you understand the background, you understand the skills, and then you start applying slowly. So typically you have meetings with the prof like once in 2 weeks. So you do one basic application and show them that this is what you have done. And if they like the direction in which you're heading, then they'll tell you, okay, you keep going and apply this also and apply that also and give me more models or give me more work. If they don't like the direction, then they'll tell you, okay, you know what you've done is fine, but you have to change this and change that. And you slowly go little by little and you learn it. So that is how an internship typically works. So they will give you a project and you have to work on it. You don't have to define your own project. In some cases, the prof might ask you to define your project, but I would suggest that in the beginning, when you're just starting an internship, you should ask for a project because it makes your life easier. You kind of know what to do and you go along the way. Anything else you wanted to know? Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, cool. So I'm going to move on to the last part, which is a cold emailing database. Okay, this is going to be quick. I'm just going to show you. So to make your life easier, you create one big database with the university, the prof name, his email address or her email address, the lab at which they're working. Don't worry about this. This is just my thing. What research interests they have. And so you have to schedule mails, right? So so supposing I schedule a mail at 2 p.m. for 9 p.m., then you mention that, okay, I have scheduled an email. Like write down whether you received a reply in 1 week. And after 1 week, you send a reminder mail. If you still haven't received a reply, then you have another column for reply received in 2 weeks. So this is how you see, since you're going to email, like I have easily emailed about 70 to 80 professors before I got my internship at NYU. So there'll be so many people, you can't keep track of it. You won't remember some random professor's research interest. It's complicated, and it's hard to like go through your sent emails and see, oh, I wrote this email at that time. So it's very easy to keep one database. You mention the date on which you scheduled the email. You mention the date on which the email was sent. Mention the date of receiving of the reply. So then later on, at any point of time, you can just go back and you have all the information that you need. So I would strongly recommend that everybody makes a database while emailing profs. It will make your life much easier. And you will little bit be aware of what is happening. For example, you won't email the same prof 2 times. That would be very embarrassing, If you email them like 2 weeks later with the same letter, that's like very bad. You shouldn't do something like that. So this is for Indian profs. I wouldn't suggest you do this because you will, I think if you send like 20 or 30 emails, you'll definitely get an internship, because Indian profs are very, open and willing to take undergrad students, and they have a connection with you because they know you. I mean, they know the system. So Indian profs, you get an internship more easily. You will get that pretty fast. But for emailing abroad, okay, one more thing that is to be noted is that all of these countries like Europe, America, Australia, Europe is not a country, it's a continent, but basically they're all in different time zones. Okay, so you have to make sure that you email, the scheduling is done in the correct time zone. For example, I think Germany, France, Netherlands, these places are only like some 4 hours behind us or something. But US, most places are somewhat around like 10.5 hours behind us. Again, in US, you have the East Coast and the West Coast, and the times are different. So that is important. You have to do all that research and make sure that you're emailing them at the correct times. I would suggest that you have another column for the time in IST where you're supposed to email them, and also color code people based on the time zone. That is like one thing that you have to do. But this is just extra. This is just makes your life easier, but it's not compulsory to do this. It takes a lot of time. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But I'm just saying that this is one thing you could do. And yeah, okay, so we're almost done. So I'm gonna send you the links of this. So this is my friend Abdur. He basically has a YouTube channel where he talks all about admits and GRE and CVs and everything. And you could watch his videos. It's a very good resource. And he's currently he's going to start his masters at University of Toronto in September of next year. That is in September of 22. So he writes about, he talks about how he got that. This is another resource that I'd like you to see. It's about how to structure a cover letter. Maybe you can get some more tips from there. So yeah, so does anyone have any other questions? At all, anything at all is fine.
Do we need to send mail through student mail or just
yes, yeah. Please send it through your student mail ID. I sent it through my IEEE ID, and I believe it went into spam for most professors. So it's best to send it through your student mail ID. The best thing would be student mail ID. If you don't have a student mail ID yet, you could send it through your personal ID, but I would recommend student mail above personal. Anything else? Anybody?
I think there is one question in chat box. I think
Would
it's
I?
from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's
There are
asking-
quite a few questions. Let me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Does doing any non-technical internship from IITs in freshman year any helpful? Okay, so the person who was asking this question, could you just explain what do you mean by non-technical exactly? Like content writing or something like that? Is that what you mean? Because as far as the professor is concerned, if you do something not in his field, it's not it's not that relevant. It's helpful in your CV overall, but it doesn't give you direct research experience. I wouldn't suggest not to do it, and doing anything in your first year is a great thing to do. But it won't count as research experience. I hope that answers your question. Okay, like something like that. Yeah, see, that doesn't count as research experience but that counts as basically event management or something in the leadership side. So that is good, and you should do it, but not at the cost of a research internship. If you're getting that or a research internship, I would say go for a research internship. Okay. And anyway, since it's in your first year, it's fine. In first year, typically people don't do anything at all. So like, it's good. Can we use LinkedIn to get connected, or do we need to email them? So typically profs do not accept LinkedIn connections because they have like thousands and thousands of connections in their connection requests, and they might not see your connection at all for days. So for example, I tried to use the LinkedIn route, and I connected only with about maybe 30 to 40 profs, and I sent out maybe 100 connections. So the probability of them accepting your request itself is low. So I would say a better approach is to go through cold mailing. All right. So will our one email make them realize that we are willing? Yeah. If you email them and your email is very well structured, you have a good resume, you take the time to email them, you write about your interests with respect to that person's lab. Like you say, this work that you're doing in this lab, this is something I like. If you do all that, then it's obvious that you're interested. So they will see that. So it's not an issue at all. They will definitely take you if they have the space in their lab. Any other questions? Anything else? Anybody?
Can you please share the link of that PPT?
Oh, yeah, of course. I'll send you all PDFs. No worries.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. So thank you all for
Yes.
coming.
Paritosh, we can start with vote of thanks.
All right.
Yeah, sure.
I would like to call Anushka to present vote of thanks.
Thank you all for such a marvelous presentation. I would like to express my gratitude to all esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a great success. Further, I extend my gratitude to our Honorable Chief Guest, Vidya Moni, for taking out time from her busy schedule to grace this event. Thank you for inspiring and encouraging us with your kind words. I must thank our organizing team and volunteers for working so hard from the past few days to make this webinar a great success. I thank all the distinguished invitees present here for accepting our invitation. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all my friends for your cooperation and listening so patiently and making this event a resounding success. Thank you.
Thank you all. Should I leave the meeting now?
Yes, ma'am, we can end.
All right. I'll share the slides with Paritosh and he can
Yeah.
circulate it to all the.
Sure.
All right. Thank you guys so much. This was a
Yes.
lot of fun.
Thank
Thank you
you.
everyone for
Thank
joining.
you so much. Yeah.